Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Timing Your Plan Giving Outreach. Now I'll pass it over to Capture's Director of Philanthropic Initiatives, Kevin Bauman.
Thank you, Alicia. Hello, and welcome everyone to Timing Your Plan Giving Outreach. My name is Kevin Bauman. I am the Director of Philanthropic Initiatives here at Capture Higher Ed. I am thrilled to be joined today by two very distinguished guests, Janae Dennison, Director of External Engagement at Central College, and Nathan Stelter, the President of the Stelter Company. Now, before we get into formal introductions, let's go through one slide of housekeeping to make sure that we're all on the same page with how we're going to spend our time together over the next hour. We'll do some quick introductions so you can meet Janae and you can meet Nathan and understand why we asked them to come in and talk about marketing automation today. We'll then move into what is marketing automation. So for anyone who's not familiar with marketing automation, you may be more familiar with it than you think, but we will quickly define marketing automation so everyone's on the same page. We'll move into some Q&A with Janae about why did Central College choose marketing automation? What were some of the challenges they were facing and they were looking to solve with marketing automation? We'll ask Nathan to define what the market looks like today overall, why Central College is not alone, and why marketing automation fits into the plan giving space overall. And then we'll move into how is marketing automation actually help Central College better time their plan giving outreach. So with that, let's do some introductions. Janae, I'm going to turn it over to you first to do a quick introduction. And Janae, can you tell us a little bit about your work at Central College as the Director of External Engagement?
Sure, Kevin, happy to. Thank you for hosting today. My name is Janae Jennison, and I serve as the Director of External Engagement at Central College. Central is located in Pella, Iowa, and it's also my alma mater. Central is a private four-year liberal arts college known for its academic rigor, leadership and character formation, global experiential learning, STEM, athletics, and service. Here at Central, I oversee the college's external affairs, including government relations, community relations, and digital strategies within the advancement and enrollment spaces, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Janae, you do so much for Central College that I was going to be impressed if you were able to keep that down. So that is a wonderful summary. We're so fortunate to have you. You do so much there, and so thank you for taking some time to talk about the advancement work that you do there. Nathan, let's let you say hello as well. Nathan Stelter, you want to talk a little bit about your work over at the Stelter Company?
Sure, thanks, Kevin. And again, excited, as Janae mentioned, both excited to be part of this call today. There's so many great things that are changing and the way we engage donors. I think this is just a great forum to share some of those examples. And yeah, I'm president of the Stelter Company here. We are actually also in Iowa. We're in Des Moines, Iowa. Been a plan giving marketing firm here for just celebrated our 57th year. I've been with the company 19 years. And really our focus and goal very much is to support charities around the country to better engage their donors around what can be perceived as complex ideas sometimes. And obviously that has changed a lot from just print to print web email to digital engagement to social, a little bit everything. So the marketing side of the world continues to evolve, and that's the reason something like what we're going to discuss today is so critical to that mix. So looking forward to our time together today.
Great, thanks, Nathan. And I'll tell you, I'm feeling a little bit left out because our special guests are both in Iowa. Janae's calling in from Pella, Iowa today, and Nathan is over in Des Moines. And so calling in today from Louisville, Kentucky makes me feel a little bit left out. So we'll have to get together for the next time that we do this. We'll do this one in person. So I'll just quickly introduce myself, Kevin Bauman, Director of Philanthropic Initiatives here at Capture Higher Ed, and helping Capture with marketing automation, which we are about to talk about today. So let's talk about what is marketing automation. Now, before I start clicking through this slide, for anyone who's not familiar with marketing automation, think about any time you're visiting an online streaming service, and maybe you watch a Clint Eastwood movie, and then next time you log in, it recommends that you watch this John Wayne Western because you watched a Clint Eastwood movie. Or maybe you're in an online retail space and it says, because you bought this tea kettle, we think that you would really like this type of tea to go along with that tea kettle. That's actually marketing automation at its finest. And what they're doing there is they're monitoring your behaviors and then generating a relevant user experience based on your behaviors on their website. So what does that mean for us in advancement? Well, every day you have alumni that are visiting your website. And so it might be the main page that they're visiting. It might be the athletics page. It may be their plan giving page, especially if it's a Stelter page, or it may be your alumni page. It could be a myriad of opportunities for alumni to engage with the institution online. But every day, alumni are choosing to engage with your institution on the website. Marketing automation is a small snippet of code that actually lives over the top of the entire website and is able to monitor alumni behaviors and interactions as they're on their website. And then we're able to generate meaningful user experiences and meaningful outreach based on those interactions. And that's marketing automation. So what does that really mean? Well, marketing automation can tell you when alumni take behaviors on your website. So we can now know that a high capacity alum in May came and visited the tennis team's website 5 different times to look at that particular area of affinity. We can know that that alum then returned in June and July to read the president's blog. So we know that this alum is engaged with the institution's messaging. We know that in August, that alum returned multiple times to read articles in the alumni newsletter. Maybe one of those is related to plan giving. Maybe one of those is related to the tennis team. It's really the alum's choice. In September, that alum returned to research a particular infrastructure project on campus. Before in October, they registered for an alumni event. Boy, wouldn't it be great if we could know that so we could then end up at that event just by happenstance. And then in November, they participated in Giving Tuesday. Now, in this case, we're talking about a fictitious alum, but this data is actually an example of an alum that was monitored at one of our partner institutions. And so marketing automation has the ability to tell you when alumni are taking specific actions on your website so we can begin to identify patterns and create meaningful outreach. So as it pertains to today's conversation, what does that really mean for the Plan Giving Office? Well, what you hear from Janae in a minute is that Central College knows, just like many of you currently know, they knew capacity. They knew that if an alum had attended an event, and they certainly knew if an alum had given for 5 years or maybe 10 years, some of those more traditional ways of defining affinity and plan giving. But by turning on marketing automation, Janae and her team were able to monitor the plan giving site to identify alumni that were visiting the plan giving site, and they could better understand who was currently having the plan giving conversation in their household today. Were they ready to commit to a meeting, or were they ready to commit to a gift? And they could even get better visibility to the type of plan giving vehicle that these alumni were researching. But by turning on marketing automation for the entire website, Janae was able to see the individual points of affinity. So in the previous example, we could now know that an alum has a particular affinity for the tennis team before we reach out to that alum. By tracking the entire website, marketing automation can give you actionable measures of true affinity. So how often is an alum coming back? Are they looking at the plan giving page? Are they looking at the athletics page? It's monitoring all of their movements across the entire website. And then it's providing those engagement opportunities. Because identifying an alum is having the plan giving conversation is one thing, and it's really important, and that's what we're going to talk about today. But also identifying engagement opportunities. So knowing that that alum is going to be at the event next week, is going to be at the homecoming game in October, is really, really important for our gift offices to be able to act on that information. So what are we going to talk about today? Janae, I'm going to turn it over to you in just a minute, but today's conversation is going to be about the outcomes of marketing automation. So the 6 criteria that you see on the left-hand side of your screen are actually the 6 criteria that Central College is now able to use to qualify alumni in their plan giving space. And so when an alum meets all 6 of those criteria, well, I should say those 5, the 6th criteria is actually the criteria that they're able to then reach out to the alum. We're able to narrow down the plan giving audience to alumni who are having the plan giving conversation today. So what that meant for Central College, and I guess what that means for Central College, Janae, I should say, is that overall there's an alumni population of roughly 19,000. And before turning on marketing automation, that alumni population was narrowed down to about 5,000 alumni who were of traditional plan giving age. But by using marketing automation, Janae and her team on campus were able to take that population of 5,000 and narrow it down to 300 alumni who were actively having the plan giving conversation in their household today, and then prioritize outreach to those alumni. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So Janae, maybe I can turn it over to you to give us a little bit about your background, which I think is relevant in talking about why you recognized the opportunity with marketing automation right away, and why you thought it was such a relevant opportunity for Central College.
Sure, thanks, Kevin. Let me start by providing a little bit of context and maybe my career background a little bit. My background is in state government and politics. I began my career as the Deputy Communications Director for Iowa Governor Terry Branstad, and then transitioned from official capacity to campaign capacity. And as one can imagine, Iowa is known, we're becoming in the thick of the campaign and caucus cycle here in our state. And so the joke is, in our state, you don't know who you're voting for until you've met that candidate. Well, I worked on the campaign side of a consulting firewall in the digital space, building and executing social media advertising website style plans during the 2014 election cycle and the 2016 caucus cycle, campaigns at all levels from city council to president. My portfolio is mostly in statewide candidates and in the congressional space. And then so after the 2016 caucuses, I transitioned into higher education, returning to my alma mater of Central College. And so what really has interested me for a long time about digital communications and marketing automation is the level of flexibility and focus that it brings to an operation. With marketing automation, you're able to adapt the environment around you within minutes or hours instead of days or weeks, as you would with traditional communication tactics like direct mail, which can be rather expensive. And if there are two things that colleges need more of, it's time and budget. So it's vital that you're smart and efficient with the resources that you have. What I love about marketing automation is that it's a vehicle that allows you to deliver precision on a mass scale. It's increasing our efficiencies and eliminating waste. So you're delivering the right message at the right time to the right person, which can be crucial during times when marketing budgets are tight. Marketing automation at Central College has really changed our strategy that used to be focused on awareness and name recognition to the masses. Rather, now we're focusing with a laser on actions and conversions of our audiences. So now we're asking ourselves the questions like, did the audience do what we want them to do versus do they know about Central College? And my analogy for this is, rather than fishing with a fish net, where we're hoping to catch the right fish in the pool, we're using a laser to extract the exact fish that we want to speak to. And political campaigns have been innovators within this space for years, really since Obama won in 2008. Campaigns are identifying precisely who their swing voters are in specific neighborhoods, and then they're communicating with them on the exact issues that will cause them to turn out to vote for their candidate. So, for example, a campaign knows that a mother in her late 30s also shops at Target, where she buys diapers for her child. So that campaign is going to be speaking to that voter, probably talking about something like children's mental health, because they know that that is going to be what drives her decision within the campaign cycle. So that's the same type of digital strategy that we're using here at Central College. We're communicating with our audience in a way that they want to be communicated with and a message that they want to know more about.
Janae, I love it. And you are certainly my go-to person if I ever run for any type of office.
You got it.
And so tell us how those campaigns turned out for you. How did your digital work in the campaign space turn out for those candidates?
Let's just say there's more wins in the columns than losses.
Love it. Love it. Great. Well, Janae, you said two things that I want to kind of use as a transition point to Nathan to talk about the industry today. And you talked about time and budget. And I think that's something that we can all relate to, and all of our listeners can relate to the fact that there's two things that we never have enough of, and that's time and budget. And so I'm going to guess that you're not alone in wanting more of those. Nathan, do you want to kind of lay the landscape for what you're seeing in the plan giving space and how marketing automation fits into that?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And again, to kind of echo what Janae just shared, Janae, again, really was able to kind of see through the picture, and as we'll discuss further, the marketing automation opportunity presented us well ahead of a lot of traditional fundraising shops because of her history and background of seeing the impact that has in the for-profit sector, or even in other types of campaigns. And most fundraisers don't have necessarily that experience. They're coming up through more traditional models. You also saw on her previous slide, again, 5,000, give or take, folks that have been identified as quote-unquote plan giving prospects. And there's always been a lot of opportunities from a plan giving modeling standpoint to wealth ratings, et cetera, to kind of sift through the data based on what people look like on paper. But also on that slide, she mentioned they have one full-time equivalent for a planned giving person. Every shop, so many shops across the country are in that space where they have all these folks that look good on paper, but they have limited time, to your point, Kevin, and time is the most precious thing all of us have. If you have 125, maybe 150 folks on your portfolio, there's no time to get in front of all those folks. And if every shop could staff accordingly, sure, we'd be able to have, you wouldn't need marketing, you'd be able to just, tie people to other people and have conversations. But the other side with planned giving, and I like to lead with kind of giving the context around where we're sitting in the planned giving space right now, things that a lot of us know, these are decisions made on a donor's timeline. And unfortunately, unlike, our peers in annual giving where there is an immediate gratification where we're engaging somebody in a traditional mode or even a non-traditional, and you see the impact, planned giving happens over time, and it's based on things that are impacting that individual. People don't think about planned giving on a day in, day out basis or even want to sit down and do their planning. The other side of that is the last point there, and then kind of that 66 versus 34% that we're sharing is, it is a very private matter, and planned giving will continue to be. It's the nature of the beast. You're talking about somebody who's well, you're talking about their mortality, you're talking about these types of things, and it is a decision when we typically poll on this, that people like to keep close to the vest. When we ask them, why haven't you shared? It's none of their, it's my business, not theirs. They'll find out when they find out. Or what if something changes in my health or in my financial situation and I have to go back to the charity? So this will continue to be an issue. And no matter it's a study that Stelter's run or other studies, we typically see that only about 1/3 of the population, that kind of 34%, will ever share their intention during their lifetime. And so, there is a huge opportunity with that other 2/3 to find them while they're still kicking the tires, while they're still interested, and figure out ways to creatively engage them. And so that's really what kind of brings us to where we're at now in the discussion we're having today. The other things that really kind of set up and are switching and are changing in the planned giving space, and for those fundraisers on the call, no doubt you've seen variations of this pyramid on the screen. This is really kind of the traditional way that we have engaged folks. For the 20 years I've been in the space, growing up with this and moves management, this is very much that let's build the large base of folks and turn them into ongoing donors, retention and major and so forth and so on. And there's that kind of aspirational aspect that planned gifts were at the top, and that was the ultimate gift. And this is still very relevant. I'm not saying this is completely gone, because there's a lot of folks who have opinions on this, but it is evolving. And there is different ways that people are engaging with this. In fact, more and more so, this kind of scenario is changing. There's some great speakers and leaders in the planned giving industry. Jeff Comfort was one of my mentors out at Georgetown for years now, out at Oregon State, has shared a couple different presentations over the years around how we've lost a seat at the table sometimes, fundraisers, how we used to hold the keys, I think was the way he put it, which I really liked because it was true. If you think back about the traditional ways we engage donors, they had to come to us if they needed to request language, tax ID, et cetera, et cetera. There was no other way to get that information. Advisors were in that same boat. They weren't maybe as versed, and still some aren't, but weren't as versed in, the techniques around charitable gift planning and had to come to us. That's not the case anymore. That really started changing 20 years ago, more so the last decade, in the digital age, and the fact that people are going online and learning about ways to engage. In fact, the slide you see in front of you now is from a 2012 study that Stelter commissioned, and it really kind of started shedding more light from a scientific standpoint on some of that shift. And what we really had asked in this is really around the ladder of engagement. You're trying to identify you, Mr. and Mrs. Planned Giving donor. What was that experience relationship with the school and the charity prior to making that decision? And you'll see the large part of the pie, the 59%, is that traditional pyramid, 10 plus years of consistent consecutive giving. And that is still a way that a lot of us model our files. But what started popping up more, and this varies based on type or size or a brand of institution, is 20% of planned giving donors had only really been writing checks for the last 5 years prior to making that decision. And even more so, 21% had never made a financial contribution to the organization prior to making a planned gift. And so this is something that really, depending on size and type of organization you are, is frustrating from a marketing, because we're doing all this work for 59%, or maybe that even, every once in a while catching the 20, but who are these 21%? And that number is growing. I've worked with some organizations where that's closer to 50% of their received and mature gifts year over year come from outside their database. And so that's really where we see the donor experience changing, and where the digital space is impacting us. As you see with kind of the next slide here, we're seeing this more, and I think every organization is seeing variations of this. Is kind of more on a vortex standpoint. There's no fixed entry point for a donor to engage with us. They don't have to be that traditional longtime donors to still care about us and advocate for us and so forth. And really, that is how digital has changed. I mean, you may have folks that have been giving to you for a long time and made a plain gifts. You may have folks that have not. You may have folks that are alumni made a plain gift. You may have folks that are not. They're just connected to you in other ways. Depending on what that connection is, and again, how digital and social media and other aspects open this up, you may have advocates for your brand, for your institution out there that you may not even know about. And what we call this really is kind of the self-directed donor. You've heard maybe self-directed consumer over the years. And it's a real thing. It is a very real thing. Every study we run in regards to how much time are you spending researching charities before you give, that number continues to go up every year, and you're probably seeing some of that in your own shops. I mean, I kind of use the analogy of, when you look to buy a car. I can't imagine, outside of maybe a select few, there's people who want to spend the time, again, talking about the resource or the lack of time that we have. They want to go straight to a dealership, and that's where they start their decision-making process. Most people are going online. You're learning, you're reading reviews. Heck, you can build your own car anymore online before actually stepping on the dealership's lot. And that same thing is happening in giving. In fact, this is a study, and there's been a couple other ones that have come out showing that. And I think this is something that's really critical as, hand this over to Janae pretty soon to kind of talk about what they've seen in their experience, because as fundraisers, it's sometimes hard for us to give up control. And we have to be okay with the fact that the decision-making process is evolving. And we can't necessarily hold their hand throughout the entire thing. We can't be that person that is advising on every step of the way. And this study from 2012 started showing us some of that, where by the time somebody engages with us, by the time we're actually able to get them on the phone or sit down in their living room, they are more than likely to be almost 60% of the way from the decision-making process. They have done their due diligence, they've talked to peers, they've done more research on your brand, your organization, your programs than you're probably aware of. And so this is something really where we see, in particular, the behavioral engagement, marketing, automation really play a critical role for us to better find those folks before we have a chance, and then allow us to have more relevant, more timely conversations with them. So I'll pass it back over to Kevin and Janae, but hopefully everybody's seeing some variation of that. I mean, that has definitely been a shift in the plain giving space over the last 5-10 years.
Nathan, that's a great overview, and thank you for providing that. And I'm going to stay on this slide for just a minute, because as we talk about that 60% complete, where marketing automation is going to fit in, and Janae, where we're going to go with the question in a minute is, how does marketing automation give you some insights that maybe some traditional existing metrics may not? And how does marketing automation really help you get some visibility to donors who are doing their due diligence in that 60% process before they're actually reaching out to you? So I'm going to pull up on the screen just for our viewers an actual visit behavior that was tracked for an alum for one of our partner institutions on a plan giving page. And you can see these are activities that an alum took over a 1-month period related to a plan gift. But while people look at that, Janae, let me just ask you our first question of the day as we put you on the spot. Janae, there's a lot of codes and metrics and scores and ratings in the industry. How does marketing automation differ from the scores that are already in your database?
Sure, Kevin. Well, traditionally, database numbers within the advancement space have been centered around the donor's capacity to give. Where does the donor fall within a range in comparison to their income? What is their lifetime giving score? And really, marketing automation, and through Capture's proprietary scoring, has expanded our data set to now include affinity of the user, plus it includes timing into the equation. So like what you see on the screen, we know when they're engaging with us on day 15 or day 22 online. And it's really been exciting for us at Central College because it lets us know how interested this donor is or this alum is in our institution, and we know exactly when they are engaging with us, and that could even be today. My philosophy is your website is one of your most valuable pieces of real estate to help you tell your institution's story. And for many, many years, the website has been this black hole where we know people are on our site. We might even know which page is the most popular. However, we don't know exactly who they are. This is where marketing automation and the combined synergies of Capture and Stelter come into play. We're able to dive deeper past the click on the link that directs the user to our site to know exactly what happens when they're on our website. What pages are they looking at during their specific journey? What content are they engaging with and for how long? We're able to see the entire user experience from entry to exit on our website. And my philosophy here is if you're putting out outstanding content, but nobody sees it or takes action on it, then what's the point? Your content should be extremely relevant to your audience because we live in this on-demand world. And I know myself as a user, I want digital content. It should be able to tell me what I need to know before I even realize that I needed to know it, or perhaps at the same time that I'm thinking about it. Your content should spark action and engagement so that way you can reap the benefits of the intelligence from your content and continue this evolving cycle of continuous improvement for your user behavior. And knowing entry to exit on your site is crucial. So going back to the original premise of your question here, Kevin, by pairing capacity plus affinity plus timing, it's finally like we're able to see out of both eyes as an institution where we have clarity and it's opening the doors to possibilities so a gift officer can be extremely effective at their job.
Janae, I love that answer. And as I look at the chart on the screen right now, maybe I can just walk our visitors through that. This is an actual visitor that we tracked or that was tracked through marketing automation. And you can notice that on day one, they clicked through an email. So if you were looking at a click-through report, you would see that information, that individual on day one clicked through that email. But where marketing automation really starts to change the game and really start to give some visibility into the environment that Nathan was talking about when alumni are doing their due diligence, is that 2 weeks later, we were able to identify that this alum came back and read about scholarships. A week later, they read about the same scholarship, and then 2 days later, they returned for a third time. They returned to the website for a third time to read about the same scholarship. So we're starting to get a better understanding of where this alum is focusing their time and certainly their individual points of affinity. And then by the end of that month period, they had already returned back to the Plan Giving page 2 different times. The first was to download multiple resources, and then at the end of that month, they returned to research a charitable IRA rollover. And so, Janae, one of the things that struck me in a previous conversation was you mentioned the difference between creating awareness and focusing on actual conversions. Do you have a thought on how marketing automation has helped you step into the donor cycle and the donor decision process a little bit differently?
Yeah, absolutely. So marketing automation lets us deliver content while
Janae, you might be on mute, or we might be having technical difficulties.
Oh, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, Kevin?
I've got you, Janae, so I assume.
Yep, we've got you. You're coming through now.
Okay, great.
Yep, we've got you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have found, and I think it'll be reflective for the audience in the next slide as well. But we have many assets on our college's website, and we want to be able to capitalize on the opportunity to tell our story. So, for example, like we have a large population who visits our athletics website every day because they want to know the latest happenings of our teams and what the scores are. So what I love about our marketing automation is that while this alum is reading last night's box score, we're able to deliver dynamic content to the user during that experience through what's called marketing interventions. And these interventions serve just subtle content suggestions for the user. And it's really given us a tool to drive the user to where we want them to go online, which is ultimately that conversion, whether that's filling out a form, registering for an event. A wonderful conversion is donating online, or filling out a form to learn more information about planned giving. And really, so now with the alum who visits the athletics website every day, they might not have been considering that planned gift to Central College, but at least we've been able to open the door to that conversation, and perhaps down the road lead to a conversion.
Janae, I love that. I love that answer. And as you start talking about where alumni are visiting online, and our listeners are looking at the chart, which shows them that the planned giving site is about 1% or less than 1% of all alumni visit behaviors on an institution's website. Now, it's a really important 1%, or we wouldn't be sitting here talking today, right? But tell us about how marketing automation has given your team more insights to create the meaningful outreach, as you talked about with the athletics page and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That 1% might not seem like a large number, but to an institution like ours, that's 200 generated, highly engaged leads that we can then begin to work into phone calls, appointments, and travel schedules. So marketing automation lets us get granular and individualized within our data points, so we know exactly who is engaging with what pieces of content, and now we're able to work through that list of leads and build out this robust schedule for our planned gift officer.
I love it. I love it. Well, that makes me think about, as your gift officers are going through their portfolio, one of the benefits of marketing automation is the ability to see existing prospects in a new way. And some planned giving interest is coming in from across the country. And how has marketing automation made it easier for gift officers to engage with prospects who may be visiting from all across the country?
Yeah, really, I describe it as it's the old adage of know before you go. As Nathan mentioned earlier, donors now have the keys, are in the driver's seat. It's a competitive environment, so we need to make the most of their time when we sit down with them. And marketing automation ensures that we have more relevant conversations with donors when we travel. Traditionally, it might have been that we would go into an appointment thinking, let me provide you an update on a current capital improvement project or a scholarship opportunity. However, what if you knew that donor was seriously considering making an IRA contribution or has been researching whether or not to document the college in their estate? You'd probably rather walk them through that conversation when you're sitting down with them face to face, as that could turn into larger, more long-term wins for the institution and perhaps even shorten the time to close the gift. And ultimately, by knowing before we go, we're being better stewards of the institution's resources.
Sure. Nathan, I'm thinking some of Janae's comments are jogging my thoughts on the place where a donor might be in their decision-making process, and some of those insights where Janae's team now knows before they go. Are those insights talking to the donor decision-making process that we generally don't have visibility to right now?
I think she's spot on. Again, we started seeing this, and as Janae referenced, and you guys were talking about, email click-through reports. I had a client, a longtime friend of mine at a university down in Florida years ago, probably 10, 12 years ago, that had taken some of his email reports, taken them by himself, and over a period of a couple months or a couple quarters, had seen certain donors, one in particular up in North Carolina, I recall, where they had been engaging with content on and on. And sure enough, he had a trip coming up and probably would not have reached out to this donor, may have not prioritized it particularly that way. But because he had seen, and that was, kind of a very manual way to see engagement, and it was stretched out over a period of time, he was able to get in front of that donor and actually ultimately close a sizable six-figure gift. With this now and the sense of immediacy, it really allows us, because a lot of us, especially within higher ed, we have alums, some are within arm's reach, but a lot are kind of scattered about. And one of the number one reasons that people always tell us in our research for making a planned gift is their experience, or it's the physical interaction they have. And we know this is a relationship business, and we want to thank and shake hands and see everybody, but we can't always do that. And so this really allows us not only to identify folks who engage, but to better understand their affinity and what they care about, and subsequently allow us to create more personal or relevant interactions with them, more engagement, and as opposed to having to look at reports that stretch out over months or quarters. This gives us a very concentrated time for our teams to take action. I mean, it's awesome in my respect.
Great. Well, that's great. Thanks for the great insight there. And I should probably mention to our listeners and to our viewers that the chart that you're looking at on your screen is actually a chart of where people are coming from to visit your plan giving site. And so as we talk about knowing before you go and being able to better understand where an alum is in their donor decision journey, to know that just about half of all alumni who are visiting your plan giving site are actually coming from out of state. Is an important metric as our gift officers are deciding where they go next and deciding their travel plans. So let's keep on the topic of gift officers. And oftentimes we know certain prospects. We know that someone's in our portfolio, they've been there for a while, and we feel like we know them really well. And so for anyone following along at home, just know what you see on your screen right now is an actual visit behavior that was recorded by a couple at one of the institutions that Capture works with. But it really is a great example of marketing automation, just being able to track behaviors on the website. And so as we talk about a prospect who was known to the institution, Janae, I've got a question for you that some of the plan giving interest that marketing automation is going to identify is actually going to come from familiar names. How has marketing automation made it easier for your team to open the plan giving conversation with prospects that may already be in their portfolio?
Sure. Yeah. At a smaller institution like ours, I mean, we know our alumni pool deeply. We know their names. We know their kids' names. We even know how well their kids' soccer team performed at the state tournament. Our pool is familiar. So here at Central, on a weekly basis, our team, including the MGOs, our planned gift officer, and our annual giving team, we all sit down together to walk through our marketing automation data to determine who needs a touch from the institution. And what we have found in our review is that we have some stealthy folks out there on our website. And they're even looking at our planned giving site, folks that weren't even on our radars. We had no idea that this is where they were at and what they've been thinking about, but marketing automation has told us that they were. So it's been really fun for our team to find these Easter eggs in our data. And this has allowed us to open up that planned giving conversation that we might not have had otherwise.
That's great, Nathan. Let me sidebar to you with your experience in the plan giving space and talk about the value of opening up a plan giving conversation with an existing major gift prospect, because there's so much going on around blended gifts. So give us some thoughts on marketing automation, opening that plan giving conversation and the value of a blended gift in that space.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think with marketing automation, it allows us another tool very much to kind of break out of our silos even a little bit. I mean, fundraising as a whole has grown up in silos. We have an annual giving team, major giving team, plan giving team. And what behavioral engagement allows us is to really see where people are engaged, because donors don't come to our websites. And in all honesty, as an organization that's hosted plan giving websites for 20 years, there's very little organic traffic to them. It's critical that we're driving behavior and creating drivers for that. But when they come into your site or they engage with you, it's about the fact that they care, the fact that they want to make an impact, the fact that they want to leave a legacy, whatever that may be. And it's not necessarily in these buckets. So again, being able to identify folks, and especially, there's a lot of folks that can track within the plan giving pages, but being able to extend that outside of the plan giving pages, where people are really passionate and engaged, just gives us a lens and a line of sight that fundraisers really have never had.
That's great insight. Great insight. Janae, the other thing that I think about when I think about marketing automation and plan giving, certainly at Central College, is we talk more and more about Gen X and older millennials, if that's a real thing, and how they're getting promotions, having children, securing their family futures, and then starting to really consider their legacies. How has marketing automation helped you be more responsive to the plan giving needs of a younger generation who's considering a plan gift today?
Sure. Great question, Kevin. We follow the data of distribution of grad years visiting our planned giving site, similar to what you see on the screen. And what we're seeing, it's not just the traditional boomers that are visiting our site. We're seeing an increase of folks that just got married, just had a baby, or some life-changing event that's causing them to start the discovery and research process in the planned gifts. They're at this life moment where they need to be thinking about how their legacy can make a difference in the lives of others. And at Central, we say, once you're here and you become an alum, you're a lifetime member of Central College. And part of that membership is that we want to serve as a resource for you, no matter what stage of life you're in. So whether that's helping writing a resume or making alumni connections or assisting the college admission process or estate planning, we want to be your go-to resource for questions in those conversations. So knowing that the Gen X and the millennials are interested in estate planning allows for our team to be their expert resident in these topics. And engaging these folks early keeps them close to our institution, which could have great long-term benefits for the college.
Sure, I love it. I love it. Janae, the other thing that I think of, especially with Central College, is you do such a great job of being an active community member. One of the things that really stuck out to me was the number of non-graduates that were active on your Plan Giving site. Now, that's not on the screen here. I think it's really a testament to the great work that you do in the community. But how has marketing automation helped you be more responsive to the interest from your community and non-graduates in general?
Yeah, well, thank you for those nice compliments, Kevin. I really appreciate it. As an anchor institution, especially within a small rural community, Pella is a town of 10,000. You cannot assume that only alumni and current donors hold a deep affinity for your institution. You really have to open up the filters and consider the folks who love the college, just simply because it's in the community and they understand the value that it brings to the community's viability. So, for instance, who are the folks that have season tickets to the football games for the past 30 years, or the folks who always volunteer for campus-wide service day, or maybe they host a student at the beginning of the semester for a home-cooked meal. Just because these people aren't listed in your database as donors or alumni doesn't mean that they don't love your institution. We find that some of our traffic is from current parents or past parents, and these people, they want to show their capacity through and their affinity for the institution, and they want to give back through their time and talent. And really, that time and talent can be turned into something really meaningful that's long-term for the college. So 20% of our traffic to our planned gift pages, that's essentially 1 in 5, you could say. And we've seen that increase throughout our time because we're using marketing interventions to direct traffic to planned giving. We understand that we're a news generator within the community of Pella. So when community members are visiting our website, we're suggesting additional high quality content that they should be taking a look at online, perhaps planned giving while they're there as well.
Well, Janae, I think that's great. And 1 in 5 visitors to your Plan Giving page is really a testament to the great work that you and your team do in the community. So I'll pat you on the back there. I've seen your data, but I'll give you another congratulations. Now, we've got one last slide for you, but we're going to change the format on it. We're going to go into lightning round here for you. And let me just say, when we talk about timing in the Plan Giving space, we've been talking about timing from the donor's perspective and how do we better time to provide the right resources to a donor to aid them in that donor decision-making process. I think it's also valuable in the 3 questions that you see on the screen here, and Janae, we're going to walk through, is how has timing been more effective for the institution and allowed you to be a better steward of institutional resources? So let's start with the fact that many of our listeners are facing those budget cuts. It's the proverbial do more with less. We've all heard that. How has marketing automation helped you be a better steward of university resources, whether it be time, budget, or else?
Yeah, great question. Well, we're the Central Dutch. Our mascot is the Dutch, so the joke is always we're Dutch and we live modestly, meaning that we want to be as efficient with our dollars as we can be, and we want to be as relevant as we can be with our audiences as well, which means serving the right message at the right time to the right person. We had an example of this earlier this year where we announced a $1 million estate gift to the college, and using marketing automation, while that user was reading that press release announcing that gift, we were able to serve a piece of dynamic content on the screen, asking the reader, are you interested in including Central College in your will? Learn more. And then that directed them exactly to where they should go within our planned giving portion of our website. The digital piece of content was a lot less expensive than mailing a postcard or a letter or brochure. Plus, we're engaging the user while they're learning a real-life example that sparks their interest.
I love it. And for anyone who's not familiar with the term dynamic content, as we used the example previously of a streaming service that said, because you watched a John Wayne movie, you may also be interested in this Clint Eastwood movie. Dynamic content is the other aspect of marketing automation and the ability to put messages on screen based on previous user behaviors and begin to influence that. And so today we really focused a lot on tracking, but as Janae mentions dynamic content, just know that marketing automation is more than simply tracking user behaviors, so then we can create relevant outreach. It's also the ability to deliver meaningful engagement while alumni are on your website and drive traffic to the website or to the plan giving page or some other outcome. So know that that's another aspect of marketing automation that Janae and her team have really taken great advantage of. So let's continue with our lightning round here. And Janae, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about the prospect research team and how marketing automation has helped the prospect research team focus outreach for gift officers.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Historically, one of the challenge is the affinity metric. And now that we have it, I mean, our prospect researcher is like, this is gold. It's unbelievable. And when we're pairing that with capacity, I mean, they are just super excited. And really, marketing automation is providing our prospect researcher with who's engaging with the institution today, so that way we can have those relevant conversations, and it's giving them the tools so that way they can make more effective assignments.
I think that's great. You know, and I see a lot of parallels between your comments on the gift officers being able to make decisions and the prospect researcher being able to make decisions. And I think it really comes down to a lot of the decision making that you can do now is just much more informed. So I love that you're looking at it at all of those different levels. So let's continue with lightning round before I jabber on too much in between questions here. I'm sure there's a fair number of our listeners that are looking at these insights, liking what they're seeing, but everyone always asks, you know, how much time will this take to implement on my teams and to keep running? And can you give some insights from your experience?
Sure. The right answer for us was a managed service. So that way it doesn't take additional time from our team. Rather, it's an extension of our team. They just happen to live in Kentucky or Des Moines. And then the added benefit is they're also experts within this field and they're studying it on a daily basis. Implementation for us was only a couple of weeks, and the process was very smooth with minimal steps. As the cost of print and mail continues to rise and traditional methods like phone-a-thon are brought to question, I would really encourage the audience today to take some risks and push the envelope. Digital lets you be flexible, adaptive, and responsive to your audience's needs and behaviors. There's a finite number of folks that are wealthy and philanthropic, and institutions are now competing with nonprofits, and especially in Iowa, we're competing with campaigns. So it's becoming more and more competitive within this fundraising space. And, you know, to be honest, other nonprofits and other organizations are already tracking your alumni and your donors. So if we don't get to them first, our major gift may go to another nonprofit or organization. And so that can be a loss to the institution if we're not competing and telling our story. The sooner we can identify someone who's engaged with the institution, the sooner we can make a meaningful impact and deliver on that gift.
Janae, I love that idea of telling your story, because I think so much about what we're talking about today, and especially in the plan giving space, is understanding a donor's individual relationship with the institution, but then also telling the story of the institution in a way that's meaningful to that alum or maybe that community member. And so as you talk about the ability to identify an individual and then tell the story, as the space gets more competitive, as nonprofits are tracking donors and things like that, the real tragedy would be if we didn't have the opportunity to tell our story, because ultimately it's going to be the donor making that decision. But I'd love that you talk about the focus on the opportunity to tell that story and what that can mean for Central College. So, Janae, thank you so much for letting us put you on the hot seat today and ask you some questions and go through the lightning round with this last slide of questions. I'm going to take us over and maybe ask Nathan to say a couple of words. And as we tell the listeners at home, what you're looking at on your screen right now is an actual visitor that was tracked on a Capture Partner Institution's website. And these are their user behaviors over a number of months. Let's see, it's going all the way from February to September. Those user behaviors are really what we're talking about in marketing automation. So the ability to better understand engagement and intention, and then engage in a more strategic and meaningful way. So Nathan, let me turn it over to you and ask you, as you look at those insights, tell me where your mind goes looking at those insights.
Yeah, Kevin, again, very similar to kind of what Janae has shared already in her experiences. The opportunity with behavioral engagement and automation from a tracking and a data gathering standpoint is huge. Because so many organizations know the power and the value of data. It's just trying to figure out how to best use it and what to use. And so, as we've seen this transition from the general web, generic information on hits, visitors, et cetera, and then email, you see a little bit of line of sight. This just gives obviously a deeper and richer understanding, even outside of some of the vehicle stuff. So we're seeing, what are some of the things that are tying to a passion affinity. And so I know the biggest thing with this and being able to look at it in a time-bound way is it really helps fundraisers take out kind of, that unknown, when is the right time that a donor may be open to these conversations? Because, traditionally, you can see what they look like on paper, you can run all your modeling, you can talk to them, you can educate, you can so forth, but a lot of it's about timing. And when you're seeing them engage, they're paying attention, whether it's some of the things here where you're seeing, they're reading about, from former chaplain, they're looking at others from a family tie standpoint or tying in. You're able to really better optimize and identify folks, when they're perhaps ready to have that conversation. So again, I think, this example here of the grad from 57, somebody who, as you state, they're unassigned, no previous outreach, but they're paying attention. They're kicking the tires. And this is the type of stuff that previously we didn't have access to.
That's great. So Janae and Nathan, I will say a big thank you as I wrap up today's conversation, which has really been intended to be about the outcomes of marketing automation. The 6 criteria that you see on the left-hand side of your screen are the criteria that Janae and Nathan have been talking about as we've been going through the webinar today. And it's really allowed the team to focus their plan giving outreach much more strategically. Now, I think we can all agree that if we look at 1 through 5 and we can find somebody who's matching all 5 of those criteria, then using that 6th criteria as a reason to reach out is certainly something that we would all like the ability to do. And so as we wrap up here, I'll just quickly remind our audience that what marketing automation has done for Central College is taken an alumni population that was overall at about 19,000, of which 5,000 of those were of traditional plan giving demographics, and really narrowed that down to 300 people who meet the criteria that you see on the left-hand side of your screen. And that's what we've been talking about today. And sort of the opportunity. So with that, I'm looking at our time. We went a little bit long, but I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. So Alicia, I'm going to ask you to chime in with some questions that may have been asked throughout the day.
Thanks, Kevin. Let's see. Our first question today is, who did you have to talk to on campus to get marketing automation implemented?
I could jump in on that one. But Janae, is there anyone that comes to mind with conversations that you had when looking at marketing automation? Which stakeholders on campus come to mind when you were going through the implementation phase?
Sure, absolutely. I can speak about it from an advancement office perspective. So obviously our VP, we also included prospect research, had to make sure that our NGO team was ready and willing to use the data and the platform, our annual giving teams involved, and then also our advancement services team. So those are the folks who manage our data on a daily basis, because we want to make sure that we have the best data out there possible for our donors. But then from a kind of outside of the advancement office perspective, we're also really engaged with our communications office. They are the ones that oversee our website. So they are a key player in terms of getting our content and our code up and running, and then helping us with that overall strategy and message. So that way, you know, when we're serving this dynamic content online to these users, it's still the Central College brand and voice. So it's not a different experience for the users, but everything that they see is still our branded materials. And then also this was a decision made by our senior leadership team, and they understood the value of it. They understood that it's not, you know, marketing automation isn't a one-size-all approach, or it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but rather it's given us the flexibility to be able to meet specific audience needs and behaviors, which has ultimately made us better stewards of institutional dollars. And I feel very fortunate that our leadership team fully understands that, and they see the opportunities here.
Janae, I think that's great. You know, the two that stick out in my mind are certainly the IT department. As you start talking about code on a website, your IT department is going to want to take a look at what that code looks like. And they're going to have questions about load times, and they're going to have questions about compliance and documentation. And so that's a conversation that anyone who's been in marketing automation for a while is going to be very comfortable having that conversation. And then Janae, the other one that comes to my mind is the marketing team, right? The marketing team to make sure that everything that's being pushed out through this brand new solicitation channel meets all of our marketing brand standards and all of those sorts of things. So I'll just echo what your comments were. And you know, I think we're coming to the top of the hour here. I would love to answer questions for the next hour. Alicia's giving me a look like we have time for one more question. So Alicia, let you chime in with one more question.
All right, we do have time for one more. It's a good one. It says, so how is this tool affected by the do not track features that are being added to web browsers?
All right, I'll chime in on that one because I'm most familiar with that from a software standpoint. So do not track, with the way that marketing automation is generally applied to an institution's website, it becomes part of the website itself. And so if the question is referring to anything like that about the messaging that is put up on an institution's website, pop-up blockers generally do not interfere with marketing automation as it's applied to an institution's website. You know, the other question about tracking alumni and making sure that there is messaging up in privacy policies is a conversation that anybody who's been in marketing automation for a while is going to be very comfortable having with you. And so if there's a specific question about tracking alumni or what that looks like in this space, please feel free to reach out to us directly. We live in that every single day. We'll be happy to help you navigate that if that's something that you're looking for. So we'd look forward to having that conversation.
All right, thank you, Kevin. And thank you everybody for attending today's webinar, Timing Your Planned Giving Outreach.